Listen, if you think you know what a professional tennis tournament is supposed to sound like, you need to wipe that slate clean right now because what is currently unfolding in the heart of the California desert is a total defiance of every tradition this sport holds dear. We are talking about Indian Wells, the tennis paradise. A place that has spent decades cultivating an image of pristine, quiet elegance where the only sounds you expect to hear are the crisp thud of a ball hitting strings and the polite, rhythmic applause of a crowd that knows exactly when to stay silent. But right now, if you step outside the gates and look toward Interstate 10, you aren't seeing the typical flow of luxury SUVs and weekend travelers. Instead, you are seeing a literal caravan of cars, vans, and buses wrapped in the vibrant blue, red, white, and yellow of the Philippine flag. A convoy of thousands of people descending upon the desert with a level of intensity that the tennis world was simply not prepared to handle. They are all here for one singular reason: a 20-something powerhouse from Quezon City named Alexandra Eala. And she didn't just show up to play a tournament. She brought the soul of an entire nation with her. To understand why this is a seismic shift, you have to realize that tennis, for all its claims of being a global sport, has always felt like a private club with very specific unwritten rules about how fans should behave. But today, those rules have been tossed out the window because what's happening in the stands feels less like a WTA event and more like a high-stakes World Cup qualifier or a championship boxing match. There are drums beating in the concourse. There are chants echoing off the concrete walls. And there is a sea of Filipino-American fans from Los Angeles, San Diego, and beyond who bought up tickets with such ferocity that they actually crashed secondary markets and left the box office scrambling to keep up with the demand. The tournament staff is in a state of controlled chaos. Security teams are having to reconfigure their entire protocol on the fly to manage the sheer volume of the crowd, and vendors are reporting that they sold out of merchandise before the sun even hit its peak. And yet, in the very center of this hurricane of noise and expectation, you can find Alex Eala on the practice courts, surrounded by fans 5 rows deep just trying to catch a glimpse of her shadow. And she looks entirely, almost, eerily, unbothered by it all. If you are just now discovering who she is, you need to understand the gravity of her journey because she didn't just wake up one day and find herself at Indian Wells. She earned this through a decade of sacrifice that most people couldn't imagine, leaving the familiarity of Quezon City as a mere teenager to move across the world to Mallorca, Spain, to train at the prestigious Rafa Nadal Academy. Think about the mental fortitude required for a young girl from Southeast Asia to leave everything she knew, her language, her food, her family, to go and grind it out in a foreign land, competing in a sport that historically hasn't made a lot of room for people who look like her or come from where she comes from. She shattered the glass ceiling early by becoming the first Filipino player to ever win a junior Grand Slam singles title at the US Open, a moment that put the entire tennis world on notice. But as anyone in this industry will tell you, junior success is a fickle thing that rarely guarantees a professional career. The transition to the Pro Tour is a brutal, soul-crushing gauntlet where players who looked like superstars at 17 can vanish into obscurity by 22 because the women's tour is designed to chew up prodigies and spit them out. But Alex didn't disappear. She chose the hard road, going quiet for a couple of years while she labored through the ITF circuit, playing in small cities and anonymous tennis clubs that most fans have never heard of, building her ranking point by agonizing point in empty arenas with zero fanfare, no cameras, and no cheering crowds. And now, after all that silent labor, she has stepped onto the center stage of Indian Wells. And the response she is receiving is unlike anything this tournament has ever witnessed in its history. To truly grasp why this support is so visceral and emotional, you have to understand the cultural context of the Philippines, a country of over 100 million people who possess a deep, almost spiritual relationship with their sporting heroes. We all remember what happened when Manny Pacquiao fought. The entire country would literally come to a standstill. The streets of Manila would empty, traffic would vanish, and an entire nation would hold its collective breath for 12 rounds. That is the kind of devotion we are seeing transferred to the tennis court today, where for a young girl watching from a laptop in Manila or a television in Cebu, seeing Alex Eala walk into the Indian Wells tennis garden to the deafening roar of thousands of her own people isn't just a sports highlight. It is a signal, a proof of concept that says this dream isn't a fantasy and that someone who shares your heritage is living it at the highest level right now. She carries the weight of an entire culture on her shoulders, and yet, when you watch her game, you see a player who has weaponized that pressure rather than being crushed by it. Being left-handed gives her an immediate tactical advantage. allowing her to serve into the ad side with a natural tailing slice that drags right-handed opponents off the court. And she has spent years perfecting the angles of her forehand, which is her true calling card. It is a vicious, heavy topspin ball with serious bite off the bounce, and you can see the Rafa Nadal Academy fingerprints all over the way she whips through the ball with that aggressive low-to-high swing. This produces a heavy, kicking ball that refuses to sit up in the opponent's comfort zone, pushing them back behind the baseline and allowing her to dictate the rhythm of every rally. But what makes her truly dangerous is the contradiction in her game. She pairs that clay court-style forehand with a flat, aggressive two-handed backhand that she can drive down the line with blistering pace, a combination that makes her incredibly difficult to read and even harder to defend against. The conditions at Indian Wells, the slow, high-bouncing courts and the thin, dry desert air, suit her style of play almost perfectly, as if the environment was custom-ordered to maximize her strengths. But perhaps her most significant weapon isn't her forehand or her serve. It's her composure, a mental toughness forged by years of national scrutiny where every junior match she played was covered by the Philippine media like a state event. She had to grow up fast because her victories were celebrated as national holidays and her losses were dissected by millions. So when she walks out into a stadium filled with chanting fans, she doesn't shrink. She breathes it in, she bounces the ball, and she executes her game plan because the crowd isn't a distraction to her. It's oxygen. On the flip side, you have to consider the psychological nightmare it is for her opponents, because tennis is fundamentally an isolating sport where you are trapped in your own head, and when you are playing against Alex Eala in this environment, every unforced error you make is met with a roar from the crowd and every winner she hits sends the stadium into a frenzy. That kind of atmospheric pressure is a legitimate competitive edge that can break even the most seasoned veterans. Beyond the lines of the court, the implications of this moment are massive for the future of the sport, as the WTA and ATP have been trying to penetrate the Southeast Asian market for decades with limited success despite the massive, passionate fan base that exists there. Alex Eala is the key that finally unlocks that door. She is the player who makes the sport relevant to a demographic that has been largely overlooked, and for sponsors and global brands, she represents a rare combination of technical brilliance and cultural significance. The conversations happening in marketing offices and executive suites right now are centered on the fact that she has a fan base that has proven it will show up physically, financially, and emotionally, which is a goldmine in the modern sports landscape. But more importantly, at the grassroots level, this is where the real legacy is built because tennis has always had high barriers to entry in developing nations due to the cost of courts and equipment, but visibility is the most powerful recruitment tool in the world. When a kid in the Philippines sees the noise, the pride, and the success Alex is having, the sport becomes real in a way it never was before, leading to increased participation and eventual investment in infrastructure. Alex Eala didn't just arrive at Indian Wells to play a few matches. She cracked the entire sport open and forced the tennis establishment to look up and take notice. Whether she wins this entire tournament or runs into a tough opponent in the next round, the victory is already a reality because she has brought a community into a sport that didn't always feel like it was designed for them. And as we continue to cover every match, every momentum swing, and every chant from the stands, we want you to be a part of this journey. So drop a comment below and let us know where in the world you are watching from today. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time to join us as we witness the rise of a new era in tennis.